Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Bell. I'm the senior minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation Santa Rosa. I'm so pleased to be able to join in worship with you today. I hope you are well, or as well as can be. In a meeting online recently, one of our fellow members described themselves as feeling flippy-floppy, by which they meant, of course, kind of up and down depending on the day, but that image made me think immediately of a fish on the deck of a boat, gasping for air, fraught, and trying to find safety, and accurately describes how we all feel, at least some of the time. How can we not be unnerved and worried with new outbreaks around the country? Our own caseload here in the state rising. Clearly, we're far from being through this pandemic, and we need to come together and give each other strength and hope to see our way through. Whether you are flippy or floppy today, welcome to you. I am sending you all love and light, thinking particularly of your parents, still trying to make things work at home with children, all of our children who have been so restricted by these times. Such a difficult thing. I'm sending love and light to you who are stuck in your homes, who are lonely, some of you who are in assisted living and have not been out of there in months. Anyone who's working out there on the front lines, especially our healthcare workers. Love and light to you who have been protesting, to you who work in public safety, to you in government and essential services, and to you relaxing in your backyard. I'm praying for all of you for your safety and your sanity. I hope you'll call me or one of our lay chaplains if you need to talk, and I hope you'll do me a favor. When the service is over, would you just pick up the phone and call one fellow member or friend that you haven't talked to in a while, just to ask maybe if they're feeling flippy or floppy today. I hope you will be nourished by today's service, celebrating the endless creative turn of the generations. I hope you'll stay tuned to the very end, where I bid Reverend Dara farewell on our behalf. Don't forget, we have coffee hour every Sunday at noon on Zoom. We have all our neighborhood groups meeting online. We have openings in our Soul Matters discussion groups. We're still making masks. We're still serving breakfast on Saturdays. We're still fighting racism and much more. So visit us on the web. Follow us on Facebook. You can learn more there, and we'll also gratefully accept your donation there if you are willing and able to do so. Thanks for all your support. Thank you for being here, and bless you for coming together in worship today. Let us begin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from Christine Robinson. I'll give you a minute to go and get your candle if you want to have a chalice during the service. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
We have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetime, matters small and great. We of all ages, women, children, men, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing loud in friendship this our heart's own song.
We are Unitarian Universalists, people of the open mind, loving hearts, and the helping hands.
One each person
person is worthwhile. 2, be kind in all you do. 3, let's help each other grow. 4, keep searching for the true. 5, each person has a say. 6, what for a peaceful world. 7, the web of life's the way that will bring us back to you.
Good morning. I'm Jen Freese, your Director of Religious Education. I have a really special book to share with you this morning. It's called Drawn Together by Min Lay and illustrated by Caldecott medalist Dan Santot, who is one of my favorite illustrators. It's a book about connecting across generations, and it's just illustrated so beautifully. I'm just excited to share it with you today, so enjoy. Drawn Together, written by Min Lay, illustrated by Dan Santot. So, what's new, Grandpa? Grandpa responds in Thai. How are you doing? Dragon. Can we watch something else? Would you like to watch something else? Right when I gave up on talking, my grandfather surprised me by revealing a world beyond words, and in a flash, we see each other for the first time. All the things we could never say come pouring out. And we build a new world that even words can't describe. But just when we're closer than ever, the old distance comes roaring back. This time, I'm not afraid. Because I know that together, we can make our way across. Now, years after searching for the right words, we find ourselves happily speechless.
The end.
Hello, my name is Tamara Murrell, and I'm a member of the Advocates for Social Justice and also the Diversity Project. Addressing the causes and effects of both racism and police brutality can seem overwhelming. Many people want to help but feel overwhelmed or uncertain as to how to proceed. The scope and depth of the issue is complex. It is difficult to figure out where to begin. I'd like to lift up a website created by local parents and educators with the goal of connecting folks to information and opportunities to engage in anti-racism activism with a variety of community leaders in this grassroots movement. You'll find information on local in-person marches and events, educational materials for adults and children, as well as information on virtual meetings and other community events. This regularly updated website is Take Action Sonoma County, and the address is here on your screen. Here are examples of 2 ongoing online opportunities. The first is Community Conversations on Race, hosted by the Community Action Partnership of Sonoma County. Join in every Monday from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on Facebook Live. Links are on the Take Action Sonoma County website. For more information about the Community Action Partnership of Sonoma County, visit their website here on your screen. The second opportunity is Showing Up for Racial Justice Action Hour, an online Zoom meeting every Monday and Friday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. This meeting will provide concrete steps you can take, calling elected officials, petitions, and other ways to demand an end to police violence against members of the Black community and other communities of Indigenous and people of color. For more information on Showing Up for Racial Justice, visit their website address here on your screen. And lastly, on June 30th, the City of Santa Rosa is holding a community forum and City Council study session. This forum will provide for public input and open dialogue around public safety policies and other city policies, projects, programs, and services that impact local communities of color. Additional information on meeting time, agenda, and participation guidelines can be at the website on your screen. This website includes the Santa Rosa Police Department policies regarding the banned use of carotid restraints, de-escalation, and incident reporting. In dismantling systemic racism and oppression, each and every one of us can make a difference, starting right here in Sonoma County. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Barbara Kezur, one of your lay chaplains. Milestones are where we share our joys and sorrows with the congregation, births and birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and other joyous occasions, as well as more tender events that we hold close to our heart, such as death, illnesses, injuries, and difficult transitions. You're invited to light a candle here to remember those you are holding in your heart. I will light a candle as well, and if you want to pause the video and grab your own candle, feel free to do so. These are the milestones we share online this week. Tamara Murrell writes, "This past week, my sweetie Liz LaRue celebrated her 65th birthday with a drive-by parade and cupcakes in her honor. A truly memorable birthday for an awesome woman. Happy birthday, Liz." Mary Wolf writes, "I'm cautiously optimistic that the day program I work for will be reopening July 10th. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you, Mary. Mary also writes, if you're driving or walking by the Glazer Center, be sure to check out the new exhibit in the front windows called UU Art in the Window. You'll find photos by Stephanie Reed and Bertha Jean about the pandemic and paintings and collages by Clellie Gummer of endangered species. Sadly, Betty and Sid Gordon write, last Sunday I wrote that our son-in-law, Matthew Gebhardt, was dying of brain cancer. He actually died this past week on Wednesday, June 24th, in the Netherlands. He leaves our daughter Linda and his 2 grown children, Andrew and Sarah. It is a time of relief and deep sadness. He has been dealing with this terrible brain cancer since January of 2018. I have happy memories of all of them here in December 2017 celebrating Christmas together. Matthew was only 61 years old. Rest in peace, Matthew. We're so sorry to hear this news, Betty and Sid, and we will hold you in our hearts. If you have something to share, please send it to laychaplains@uusantarosa.org. Let us know if you want it included in the online service or in the weekly compilation and Milestones book. If you have a private concern, we'd love to talk to you. We lay chaplains are Paula Hammett, Lucia Milburn, Bruce Hope, Tamara Murrell, Mary Lil Lee, Al Liner, and myself, Barbara Kezur. We give thanks for the sharing of these milestones, for how they remind us of our shared humanity and common fate and inspire our compassion and care. May all our joys be magnified as we delight together in the good news, and may all our sorrows be eased as we carry them together in community. May you who are searching for comfort, courage, faith, and hope find what you seek. And may all people grow in wisdom, compassion, and love so that the whole world might live with justice and in peace. And so may it be.
I'd like to take us into our time of stillness together, which we use each in our own way for reflection, contemplation, and prayer, with a reading from our hymnal number 440 by the Unitarian Universalist minister Philip Hewitt. If you haven't swung by the Glazer Center during the week sometime to borrow a hymnal, please do so. You may want one of these at home while we're apart from each other. This is From the Fragmented World. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we come in search of wholeness. By many cares and preoccupations, by diverse and selfish aims are we separated from one another and divided within ourselves. Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. We cherish our oneness with those around us and the countless generations that have gone before. May we hold fast to all the good we inherit, even as we would leave behind us the outworn and the false. May we escape from bondage to the ideas of our own day and from the delusions of our own fancy. May we labor in love for the dawning of a new day without hatred, violence, and injustice. May we nurture the growth in our own lives of the love that has shone in the lives of the greatest of people, the rays of whose lamps still illumine our way. In this spirit, we pray.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, smooth in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Roots folding close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
When I was a student in divinity school, now more than 15 years ago, we attended the First Parish in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I ended up having a job there. I worked for a long-standing program of the congregation that was called Tuesday Meals, and it was very much like our Saturday breakfast, which is just to say every Tuesday night, a hot dinner was served for anybody that needed it, and the fellowship hall of the congregation was filled with noise and laughter and good smells. And the program was run, particularly during the day when the meals were prepared, by a group of women of the congregation who proudly called themselves the Old Ladies. They were led by the extraordinary and indefatigable, I love that word, Dorothy Vetter, who happened to be the wife of a well-known Unitarian and then Unitarian Universalist minister who was associated with First Parish, whose name was Herb Vetter, Reverend Herb Vetter. You may have heard me mention him before. He created the Harvard Square Library website, Harvard Square Library, which is just filled with incredible Unitarian and Universalist and Unitarian Universalist resources. Dorothy, in her own right, though having lived the life of the spouse of a minister, mostly through her many years, was a pillar. I mean, like full-on Doric column pillar of the congregation. And she and the other ladies, Brigid, this old Swedish lady, others, they were so welcoming to me and so encouraging of me and so straightforward about congregational life. Their forthrightness when I would ask them questions, about the parish and about life was wonderful. They had this been there, done that attitude that was right in that sweet spot of wisdom and cynicism. And they called me kiddo and sweetie, and they flirted with me shamelessly. I flirted back, and I loved them, and I enjoyed hanging out with them more than almost anybody in the whole congregation, including the people my age. Rita and I were very young when our daughter was Caitlin was born. And so as far as our peers in the age group, 15 more years ago, 20, I mean, we had an 18-year-old before most of our peer group there was even getting married or having babies. And, the old ladies were deep and smart and funny, and they'd seen a thing or two. I loved them. And can I tell you, I'm still in love with the old ladies of the congregation. That ability to connect with cool and powerful older people is truly one of the most wonderful things about congregational life to me. Don't get me wrong, I love everybody. I really do. But, I was kind of a mama's boy, I guess, and I see who most frequently shows up to meeting and volunteer efforts here at UUCSR. So yeah, I particularly love, shall I say, the older and bolder ladies and people. The men are awesome too, of the congregation. Honestly, if there weren't a reasonably steady supply of capable and willing 65-year-olds, particularly women, this congregation would have died in 1960. I suspect there would not even be a thing we call religion if it weren't for the older and the bolder. I've been a minister for about 14 years now, and one of those bumper sticker truths that has laid claim to me that I've observed most frequently is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. That there are certain dynamics of life, certain energies between the generations, certain challenges of spiritual community that never go away. There are never, it turns out, quite enough volunteers, and there's never quite enough money. And one thing I've observed again and again is that the older folks of the congregation often wish that the congregation would become younger. And they maybe even make a crack about all the gray hairs or, all the old people that are around. And I understand the motivation, certainly. Why do we want younger people to start coming? Because someone has to carry the teachings and the traditions forward. We older folks, I'm almost 53, want to make sure that someone will treasure what we've treasured and sustain what we've sustained and carry the hard-won lessons that older generations have learned forward. There's a feeling of wanting to hand off the baton. And there is a beauty in that image of racers, over the generations. Anyone who ever tried to build something good or keep the faith, handing it on to the next generation. There is real power in that beautiful image, but there's also something not quite right about it, because it implies that at any given point, like only one person or one generation, the younger folks or whoever, only one group or person at a time is holding the baton in a relay race. And I don't think that what we're carrying with and for and towards each other is a baton. It's much more like a thread. And that thread is actually at all times uniting all the generations, all the people, young and old. And I've noticed right now in particular, between the coronavirus and the social upheaval for justice that's all around us, there's a lot of discussion about generations and the differences between the generations and which generation did or didn't fail the others and who is or isn't picking up the baton. And it's very baton thinking. And I've been skeptical of that line of thinking that too narrowly looks at generations and their differences and who did what. It's thought-provoking. It's called Strauss-Howe generational theory. If you want to get quite geeky, you can check it out online. In that whole scheme, I'm Generation X. It's okay if you don't know anything about us. We expect that. I'm skeptical of too distinctly trying to characterize young people, old people, this generation or that. Partly because one of those things that stays the same, like I was saying before, not just in congregational life, but sort of in the world all around us. One thing that has stayed the same for centuries is that older people think younger people are degenerate and lazy, and young people think old people are boring and irrelevant. This seems to be true through all of human history. Over the last week, I've read a number of articles with titles like Kids These Days, an analysis of the rhetoric against youth across 5 generations, or the 2,500-year-old history of adults blaming the younger generation. I didn't find nearly so many articles about younger people blaming the older generation, but that's because they're probably on an internet platform that I don't know about. It's funny when you read these articles to realize that, the kind of the engine of history is driven by these tensions between the previous generation and the generation that's to come. And the older folks have had something to say about it since time immemorial. Aristotle: young people are high-minded because they have not yet been humbled by life, nor have they experienced the force of circumstances. They think they know everything and are always quite sure about it. That's from On Youthful Character in the 4th century BC. You look ahead many, 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 many years to 1695, you find a little book for children and youth, being good counsel and instructions for your children, earnestly exhorting them to resist the temptation of the devil, by Robert Russell. Don't you want to read that? There he said, I find by sad experience how the towns and streets are filled with lewd, wicked children. And many children, as they have played about the streets, have been heard to curse and swear and call each other nicknames. My favorite of all, as long as I'm rolling on this, was from Scientific American. Believe it or not, so says the internet, July 1858, where someone was writing against the youthful tendency to do this. A pernicious excitement to learn and play chess has spread all over the country, and numerous clubs for practicing this game have formed in cities and villages. Chess is a mere amusement of a very inferior character, which robs the mind of valuable time that might be devoted to nobler achievements. It goes on from there. Chess. These days, the generation that's probably getting the most attention because of who's out on the streets and who's going to make such a huge difference in the next election are the millennials. These are people who were born between 81 and 96, so they're like 24 to 39 years old. The subject of a big Time magazine article a few years ago by Joel Stein that's worth looking up that proclaimed them the me generation. It said, today's young people were lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. Fortunately, the cover also had a smaller line underneath that said, and why they'll save us all. And at the end of the article, Stein himself said, okay, there's data about narcissism and laziness and entitlement, but a generation's greatness isn't determined by data, it's determined by how they react to the challenges that befall them. Don't you think today's young people are doing an amazing job of reacting to the challenges that befall them? Greta Thunberg's in everybody's mind. You've got those amazing kids after the Parkland shootings, David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez. In our own town, Megan Foote from our youth group was out there in activism against guns in the schools. And these days, forget it, I guess even the millennials, it'd be Generation Z, the next generation after that, who are at the center of the protests that are rapidly transforming the conversation and the legislation around racial inequalities in our country. I hope you saw the Press Democrat article about Joy Oyodele, if I'm saying her name right, who thought, as the paper said, that at most 50 people would show up to the first protest she organized in honor of George Floyd. She'd never organized anything before, although her family had kind of a tradition of social justice. She saw the video. She used the internet to get the word out there, created a little graphic, posted it on Instagram. Over 300 people showed up. That was one of those first marches right in front of the congregation here, marching peacefully through the streets with her. And of course, we see it in almost every big city in the country these days. Young people consciously, deliberately, thanks very much, taking the reins of the next wave of transformation that's going to sweep our society. They are, of course, though, not the only people carrying that baton, because it's not a baton, it's a thread. Protests today for whatever cause sit on the shoulders of people who came before. Everyone through the generations is holding the thread. We all, young and old, all of us, whatever age, children, if we want to actually move the future forward in the direction of peace and compassion and love and fairness, if we want to carry our faith, our hope, the lessons of our experience, our history, our deep thoughts, our songs and our poems of the past into the future, we all have to carry that thread together. That's one of the beautiful things about congregational life, is it's one of the few places in the world where consciously, ears open, mouths open, people of every generation come together. The old to be inspired by the young to learn and be inspired by the old. That thread is like, that's the very heart of life. In Zen, we call it the red thread, like red like blood. It comes from a koan, one of our Zen stories that are to remind you of your awakened nature. It says, how is it that perfectly accomplished saints and bodhisattvas are still attached to the red thread? In other words, even when you realize everything changes, everything disappears, there's nothing you can grasp or hold onto, how is it that even those who realize that still love life and care about the future and work for change, hurt when things go wrong? Why are they attached to the red thread? And my response to that koan was, I love my granddaughter so much. You can't help it. If we open our hearts that way, to just that pure instinct to love and respect our elders and to love and respect our children, stop blaming one generation and another for our troubles, look with gratitude upon the leaders of the struggles and growers of morals and painters of visions of every age and time. That's the spirit to bring. Seeing that actually no generation ever fully dropped the thread. Everyone has carried the thread in their own way, and we can learn from each other. The whole of history is this wonderful dialectic, Hegel said, but I don't think it's between ideas or social movements. It's between parents and their children. It's between old folks and teenagers, and it's a good thing. What a wonder, this great turning of the generations. We all have our part to play because it's not a baton, it's a thread, and we all carry it. Let me finish with the words of William Stafford, one of my favorite poets, in a famous poem called The Way It Is. There is a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Love, justice, the hope of the ages. Don't let go. Kids, don't let go. Grandpas and grandmas, don't let go. Beginners, experts, young and old, all bodhisattvas, don't let go. See you out there.
Happy Sunday, everybody. Whenever I think of wisdom of the ages, I think of this song, Grandma's Hands. Grandma's hands clapped in church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands played a tambourine so well. Grandma's hands used to issue out a warning. She'd say, Billy, don't you run so fast. Might fall on a piece of glass. Might be snakes there in that grass. Grandma's hands. Grandma's hands soothed the local unwed mother. Grandma's hands used to ache sometimes and swell. Grandma's hands used to lift her face and tell her, baby, Grandma understands that you really love that man. Put yourself in Jesus' hands. Grandma's hands. Grandma's hands used to hand me a piece of candy. Grandma's hands picked me up each time I fell. Grandma's hands, boy, they really came in handy. She'd say, Matty, don't you whip that boy. What you wanna spank him for? He didn't drop no apple core, but I don't have Grandma anymore. If I get to heaven, I'll look for Grandma's hands. Grandma's hands. Grandma's hands. Shit, I screwed up.
My name is Clare Whitfield, and I'm the worship associate this Sunday. My subject is the gifts of age. What are the gifts of age? Old friendships, leisure, family. As we age, family becomes more important, and we're fortunate if we can be near them. Actually, we need them more, and they often want to be nearer to us in case we have an emergency, and sometimes they really like us. Wisdom. We have gone through a lot. Some of us have suffered a lot, and we have discovered what is really important in this life. The funny part is that in my case, my adult children are not really interested in my hard-earned wisdom. They rarely ask for any advice, and they certainly do not want to hear unsolicited advice. So what do we do with all of our accumulated experience? In Atlanta, I had a UU friend, Mark, whose father, a decorated World War II pilot, was consigned to an institution for people with Alzheimer's. My friend Mark was disturbed by two things. The first was that his father had never told him what he believed, what he had learned from life. The second was that the nurses and attendants at the Alzheimer's institution saw only a helpless, crazed old man, not the proud, strong, brave war hero he had once been. So Mark took it upon himself to use old newspaper clippings to write a story of his father's wartime exploits of extreme bravery, and gave copies to the institution's staff. It comforted him to know that the staff could now look at his father in a different light. But Mark was unable to solve the first problem, that his father had never shared his deepest thoughts about life with him. And now it was too late. So a real gift of age that I can give to my grown children is a memoir of sorts, including my low points as well as my high points and what I learned. In it, I can share whatever bits of wisdom I have accumulated throughout the years. I also include funny family stories that might otherwise be lost when I'm gone. I've already got a good start on it, but I've got a long way to go. So what have I learned? What have I learned that is relevant to today's unsteady, upsetting world of coronavirus pandemic, incompetent national leadership, continued racial injustice, and massive protests in the streets? Well, first of all, I have learned that ignorance is not bliss, and it is not a good excuse. I saw that easily when I studied the rise of Hitler in my college history class. The German people refused to see what was right before their eyes. Their silent acquiescence to a madman and his administration enabled a long, terrible war and the horrors of Auschwitz. How could I see that so clearly, but knew nothing of the silent acquiescence that enabled the long, terrible practice of convict leasing in my own city of Atlanta, where police and sheriff's deputies rounded up Black men, charged them with misdemeanors like loitering, jailed them, and then leased them to brickworks, lumberyards, and plantations to work for free. Thousands of Black men were re-enslaved, many of them to die in their chains. We didn't know our own recent history, much less the current facts of institutional racism and all the insults and injuries suffered every day by the Black people of Atlanta. Somebody chose what we were taught in school. In 7th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Davenport, gave each of us a packet of beautiful portraits of Confederate generals, and we sang Confederate songs. I grew up in a culture that promoted ignorance and silent acquiescence. Second, I have learned that laws without public assent are little better than no laws, or worse, because they can lull us into thinking we did something good. Think of the 13th Amendment with its loophole that permitted slavery by another name. Think of LBJ's Great Society that petered out as soon as the Vietnam War revved up. So the current protests against racial injustice by people of all colors, and especially by youth, is a hopeful sign that laws with teeth that can be enforced are now possible. But here's the rub. Without all people working alongside people of color, doing the uncomfortable, frustrating tasks of showing up at county supervisors' meetings and legislative hearings, writing and calling representatives in Congress and the state legislature to demand that justice be done, things will just settle back down into old, terrible ruts. I'm a political person. I've done stuff like that, but I'm afraid I might not have the energy and stick-to-itiveness for the job at hand. Here's where we need younger people who have the energy and the righteous anger to follow their protests with the more challenging work ahead. And it's not just the young people who will be called upon. It takes a certain amount of life lived, of maturity, of seeing that the pendulum swings back and forth, that nothing is as clear cut as it seemed, that you might have to work with people you don't like, that you might fail before you make progress, and that progress is often slow. Actually, it will take all of us together, old and young, and not so young, to bring about the justice and harmony that our hearts desire. And finally, a third thing I've learned, I've realized that I don't have the stamina and energy I had in my youth. I can hardly make myself do the small tasks that indivisible, whose leadership I trust, asks me to do. So maybe my job is to be more of a cheerleader than a player, doing the jobs I can do, but encouraging and trusting a younger generation to do most of the hard work ahead. So 3 relevant things I've learned. Ignorance is no excuse. Public assent is necessary. And maybe it's actually here now to get good laws passed and enforced. And alas, I'm not as young as I used to be. And I need faith and trust in the gifts of all generations to bring a world in which justice rolls down like waters. Actually, I don't have to write these 3 particular things for my 5 grown kids. They already know what I think on these subjects. But I will write other things. They may not read it right away. Maybe they still think they don't need anything from the older generation. But one day they will be glad I shared with them my stories, what I believed, my hopes, my disappointments, and what I held dear. A gift of age.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now that
Hey, everybody. Well, sadly, wonderfully, the time has come to bid farewell to Reverend Dara and to extend our warmest well wishes to her as she leaves her incredible service here as our assistant minister over the last couple of years and moves on to the fruitful pastures and wonderful opportunities of the UU congregation in Petaluma. And so on all of our behalf, I just want to say a couple of words to you, Dara, of the deepest gratitude. Your arrival here was a cause of great excitement. It was a goal that we had for many years. The possibility of expanding the way that we could minister to the people in the community here that an assistant minister represented was a real kind of triumph for the congregation. And you filled those expectations beautifully, starting from the very beginning. When really not long after you were first here and starting to find your footing, I made you, I begged you to pray with me as the resolve grew in me to begin my recovery journey. And as we worked together to figure out what that would look like. And during the couple of weeks that I had to be gone, the way that you just assumed the leadership role here. And you seem to have a habit of that. I don't know what we're going to do without you on the bench, because the same thing happened when we had the pandemic hit. And as fate had it, instead of a sabbatical, I was off getting open heart surgery instead. And so to be personally in that place of not being able to tend to the congregation I love so deeply because I had no capacity to do so, but to know from head to toe that everybody was in the best possible hands with you and with, of course, with Reverend Bonnie and all the other leaders. I cannot overstate the value of that gift to me and to this community. And so, we have all kinds of great conversations and memories, and we've had a lot of laughs. But those are the things that I will treasure until the end of my days.
Oh, thank you so much, Reverend Chris, for sharing those words with me. And, it has been such an honor, such a profound honor to come aboard as assistant minister at the congregation. And I remember reaching out to you when I learned that this opportunity was coming forth, that the good folks in the congregation and you had said, yeah, let's try to bring another person in to help increase inreach and outreach, really. I was at this time where I was really thinking, like, what is my calling right now in Unitarian Universalism? And wow, did this opportunity just renew my heart so much to be back in a congregation that is thriving and creative and alive and so deeply caring as this congregation is, was such a breath of inspiration that filled my cup so deeply and continues to do so. And that is due to every single person that's a part of the community and due to your tremendous, joyful, creative, truth-telling, courageous, spiritual leadership. And it's just been such a joy, colleague. I know I've gotten to say this before, but truly to have been able to journey with you, Rev Chris, and with the whole congregation and work so closely with the board and other lay leaders. There's just not been a moment, even in the hard, unexpected changes that happen in life, where I haven't thought this community is tremendous. And my life will always be transformed by the ministry that we have shared. And thank you for inviting me into the sacred trust. And I hope that I have been worthy of that. And I just offer thanks to everyone in the congregation for inviting me to serve alongside and with you and to be a champion for what UUCSR can do. And there's so many memories I have, but from being with worship associates in a training, practicing how best to utilize the sanctuary, to cutting the cake, celebrating Ruth and her family who came seeking asylum, and the way in which our whole congregation rallied, how closely Rev Chris, you and I and the Borders and Beyond leadership worked to really wrap our loving arms around that family in such a trying, intensive moment. It's been a blessing. All of it, actually, all of it.
Yeah, right on. Thanks. I feel about our congregation like parents feel about their babies. I mean, it really is the most wonderful congregation in the whole wide world, and that's objective, I assure you. Well, and
we hope some of that goodness and joy and praise will extend to the Petalumans, and that together we will all really shape, this amazing flourishing of Unitarian Universalism, which I know we've been talking about. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt this.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the exciting thing that I hope our folks can take from this as well, is that because of our special relationship, there is a whole new level of promise for cooperation and friendliness and shared efforts, and just magnifying the way our tradition does things spiritually in this whole area. So I hope that people will be enthusiastically looking forward to our ever deepening relationship with UUP in the future. So onward and upward forever, as James Freeman Clarke once said, and with the very deepest thanks. And you're a natural, a great minister, Reverend Dara, and those people are very fortunate to have you. And you will always occupy a special spot in the memory of this community. So to Reverend Dara, imagine there's hundreds of people waving their hands online now at different times, but you can feel that throughout the week. And come to coffee hour, friends, if you're watching this on Sunday morning, so that we can toast our coffee to Rev Dara. And I guess that's it for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take good care, everyone, and the journey continues.
Amen.